Lena walked home from school at the same slow, thoughtful pace she always had. She was an ordinary girl in many ways, but people who knew her often said she noticed things others didn't. She noticed the way the wind made the trees shake. She noticed when the shopkeeper looked tired. She noticed when someone was upset, even if they tried to hide it. She didn't think these things made her special. She just felt it was natural to pay attention to the world around her. That afternoon, the street was busy. Cars honked, children ran ahead of their parents, and shop signs blinked in bright colors. It was one of those warm days where no one wanted to walk fast. Lena carried her school bag across her shoulder, listening to the soft sounds of people talking around her. She planned to stop by the bakery for a small snack before heading home. She had saved a little money, just enough for a sweet roll. But as she turned the corner near the bus stop, she noticed something unusual. A woman, older than anyone Lena knew personally, was struggling with two large grocery bags. One looked like it would tear any second. The woman's hands shook slightly as she tried to adjust her grip. People walked past her, some glancing at her with polite but distant eyes, as if they didn't want to get involved. Lena slowed her steps. She watched for a moment, unsure if she should help or if the woman would be uncomfortable with it. She didn't want to intrude. She had been taught to respect people's space, but she also couldn't look away. Something about the woman's tired eyes made Lena's chest feel tight. Finally, she made a choice. She approached slowly and said, in a gentle voice, "Ma'am, would you like some help carrying those?" The woman lifted her head. There was surprise in her eyes, as if she hadn't expected anyone to speak to her. "Oh, no, it's fine," she said quickly. But her voice didn't sound strong. It sounded more like she was used to refusing help because nobody ever insisted. Lena didn't step back. She didn't want to push, but she also didn't want to leave her struggling. "It's okay. I'm not in a hurry," she said. She smiled a little to show she meant no harm. The woman hesitated. For a second, Lena thought she would refuse again. But then the woman's shoulders dropped slightly and she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Lena took one of the bags carefully. It was heavier than she expected. She wondered how the woman had been holding both. "Where are you going?" she asked kindly. "Just around the corner," the woman replied. "It's not far. I guess I bought more than I should have." She tried to laugh, but it came out tired. They walked together at a slow pace. People continued passing by, but now Lena didn't pay attention to any of them. She focused on the woman, making sure she matched her steps and didn't move too fast. The old apartment building came into view. It was small, with faded paint and a door that creaked when the woman pushed it open. Lena followed her inside, noticing the air felt cooler and quieter than the street. "Thank you, dear," the woman said when they reached the door to her unit. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Lena replied. She set the bag down gently. The woman gave her a long look. "Not many people stop these days," she said. "Everyone is busy." Lena didn't know what to say to that. She had seen people ignore others before. She didn't think they did it because they were bad. Sometimes people didn't know what to do. Sometimes they were afraid of bothering someone. Sometimes they were simply too caught up in their own worries. The woman reached into her bag, searching for something. "Do you want a drink? Water? Juice?" she asked, trying to be polite. Lena shook her head. "No, thank you. I should get home soon. But if you ever need help again, you can call me." She pulled a small note from her pocket, the one where she kept reminders for school, and wrote her number on the back of it. She handed it to the woman. The woman stared at the note for a moment, then looked at Lena. "You are very kind," she said softly. Lena smiled again, but she felt a little shy from the compliment. She didn't feel like she had done anything big. She had only helped carry some bags. Anyone could have done that. As Lena stepped out of the apartment building and back onto the street, she felt lighter. She didn't know why, but helping the woman made her feel warm inside, like a gentle sunlight that stayed with her even after she walked away. She continued down the road, but her mind kept drifting back to the woman's tired eyes, the slight tremble in her hands, the quiet thank you. It made Lena wonder how many people passed by without noticing someone who needed help. That night, after she finished her homework and washed up, She sat by the window in her room. The sky outside was dark, except for a few stars. She thought again about the woman and hoped she was resting. Lena told herself that helping one person wasn't a big thing, yet the feeling stayed with her longer than she expected. Meanwhile, in the small apartment, the woman sat alone at her kitchen table. The groceries were put away, the bags folded neatly. But her eyes were fixed on the little note with Lena's number. She held it carefully, as if it were something fragile. It had been a long time since anyone had offered help with such sincerity. Most people hurried past her these days. She didn't blame them. She knew life was busy. She knew she wasn't easy to approach. But the girl's kindness had touched her deeply. She placed the note in a small wooden box where she kept a few important things, documents, memories, and little items that mattered to her. She wasn't sure if she would ever call the number. But somehow, the idea that she could made her heart feel a bit lighter. Lena's small act of help seemed simple, almost ordinary, but for the woman, it wasn't ordinary at all. It had been a long time since anyone had paused their day just to make hers easier. As Lena got ready for bed, she didn't know that her small choice just stopping to help a stranger would soon grow into something far bigger. She didn't know it would change not only the woman's life but her own at that moment. She simply thought she had done what felt right. The next morning was bright and warm again, and Lena prepared for another usual day. But something inside her had shifted, even if she didn't yet understand how or why. She walked to school with her bag bouncing lightly against her hip, and a quiet hope in her heart that the woman was doing better today. The world looked the same as always. Cars moved, people hurried, shops opened their doors, but Lena saw it all a little differently. She noticed the way an older man struggled to reach a shelf in a store window. She noticed a mother calming her crying child. She noticed everything, as she always did. But now there was a new layer to what she felt. She realized that even the smallest act can change someone's entire day. And somewhere, not far away, the woman who received that small act of kindness sat by her window, looking out at the street. She held a warm cup of tea in her hands and thought about the girl who had stopped when everyone else kept walking. She whispered to herself, maybe people still care. Neither of them knew it yet, but that brief moment shared between them would soon grow into an unexpected miracle, one that neither had imagined, but both would come to cherish. For now, though, it was just the beginning. A beginning that started with a simple choice, a gentle smile, and a girl who decided to help when no one else did. The next few days passed quietly for Lena. She went to school, did her homework, and helped around the house, just like she always did. But every now and then, her mind drifted back to the elderly woman she had helped. She wondered if the woman was eating well, if she managed to carry her groceries the next day, or if she had anyone to talk to. It was a strange feeling, worrying about a stranger she had met only once. But something about that short meeting had stayed with her. Maybe it was the tiredness in the woman's eyes. Maybe it was the way she held onto the grocery bags like she was used to doing everything alone. One afternoon, 3 days after their meeting, Lena was sitting at the kitchen table doing her science homework. The smell of lentils cooking filled the room. Her mother hummed softly while preparing dinner. Everything felt peaceful until Lena's phone buzzed softly on the table. She didn't normally get calls, only messages from classmates about assignments. So when she saw an unknown number on the screen, she hesitated for a moment. Then she picked it up. "Hello?" she said. A gentle voice responded, "Is this?" "The young girl who helped me with the bags the other day." Lena recognized the voice instantly. "Oh yes, it's me. Are you okay?" There was a pause on the other end, as if the woman didn't know how to express what she wanted to say. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said softly. I have a clinic appointment today, and I'm not feeling steady enough to walk there alone. I wouldn't have called, but you said I could." Lena felt something warm rise in her chest. She was glad the woman trusted her enough to call. "It's no bother," she said quickly. "I can come right now. You don't have to rush," the woman replied. "The appointment is in an hour. I'll be there soon," Lena promised. She ended the call and stood up. Her mother noticed. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Yes," Lena said, putting her shoes on. "I'm going to help someone for a little while." I'll be back before dark." Her mother trusted her and didn't ask many questions. Lena grabbed her small bag and stepped outside. She walked quickly but carefully, not wanting to keep the woman waiting. The apartment building looked the same as before, quiet, slightly worn, but peaceful. When Lena knocked on the door, it took a moment before it opened. The woman stood there wearing a simple coat and holding her purse. Her hands shook slightly. "You came," she said, relief softening her face. "Of course," Lena replied. "Are you ready?" The woman nodded, and they walked out together. Lena noticed how slow the woman's steps were, how she paused every few minutes to take a breath. Lena stayed close enough to help, but not too close to make her feel uncomfortable. Along the way, the woman said, "I didn't want to trouble you, but I didn't know who else to ask." "It's not trouble," Lena assured her. "I'm glad you called me." The clinic was only a few streets away, but the walk felt long for the woman. When they finally stepped inside, the cool air of the waiting room felt calming. Lena helped her check in, then they sat together. For a long time, they didn't talk. The waiting room was quiet, except for the low sound of a television playing the news. Finally, the woman spoke. "My name is Nira," she said in a low voice. "I never told you the other day?" Lena smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Nira." Nira seemed to relax a little after that. She told Lena that she had lived in that apartment for many years, even before her husband had passed away. She didn't have children nearby. One lived in another country, and the other rarely visited. She used to be more active, but her health had slowed her down over the years. Lena listened quietly. She didn't interrupt or ask too many questions. She simply let Nira speak at her own pace. At one point, Nira said, "I used to walk everywhere. I loved going to the park, the market, anywhere. But lately, I get tired easily. My legs don't support me the way they used to." Lena nodded softly. "It's okay to ask for help," she said. "Everyone needs help sometimes." Nira looked at her for a moment, her eyes soft, but filled with something Lena couldn't quite name. "I almost forgot what it felt like to have someone by my side," she said quietly. When Nira's name was finally called, Lena helped her into the doctor's office. She waited in the hall, tapping her foot gently on the floor. She wasn't impatient, just thoughtful. She wondered what it must feel like to face health problems alone. After about 20 minutes, Nira came back out. She looked a little tired but calm. "Thank you for waiting," she said. "Do you need to pick up medicine?" Lena asked. Nara nodded, and they headed to the pharmacy next door. Lena helped her read the labels and carried the small bag of medicines. When they stepped outside, the air felt cooler. Early evening light had begun to settle over the streets. "Can I walk you home?" Lena asked. "I would like that," Nira said. The walk back was slow, but peaceful. Lena asked gentle questions about Nira's favorite food, her old hobbies, the neighborhood years ago. Nira answered them all, and sometimes she even smiled. Her smile was small and fragile, like something that hadn't been used for a long time. When they reached the apartment building, Nira exhaled deeply, as if relieved to be home. Lena followed her to the door to make sure she got inside safely. "Thank you," Nira said as she stepped in. "You don't know how much this means to me." Lena shook her head. "I'm just happy to help." Nira looked at her carefully, then said, "Most people say that, but not many truly mean it."
Oh.
Lena didn't know how to respond. She didn't want to sound like she was trying to be something special, but she did mean the words. She simply said, "If you ever need help again, really, just call me." Nira nodded, and Lena turned to leave. As she walked down the hallway, she felt something shift inside her. It wasn't heavy or sad. It was something different, something gentle and important. When she got home, her mother warmed dinner for her. Lena ate quietly, thinking about Nira. Her mother noticed and asked, "Is something on your mind?" Lena explained everything: the call, the walk to the clinic, and the way Nira had seemed both grateful and lonely. Her mother listened with interest and nodded thoughtfully. "Helping someone is a blessing for both people," she said. "Maybe she needed someone like you, and maybe you needed someone like her, too." Lena didn't quite understand that last part. She stored the words in her heart. The next morning, Lena woke up earlier than usual. Before leaving for school, She glanced at her phone as if expecting a message. There was none, but that didn't stop her from thinking about Nira throughout the day. After school, Lena walked by the bakery and bought a small bread roll. She didn't eat it. Instead, she wrapped it carefully in a napkin. She thought it might be nice to stop by and check on Nira, not because she expected gratitude, but simply because she cared as she approached the apartment building. She felt a small flutter in her stomach, like nervousness mixed with hope. She knocked gently. It took a moment, but the door opened. Nira's face appeared, surprised but not unhappy to see her. "Oh, hello," Nira said softly. "Did something happen?" "No," Lena said with a smile. "I was just passing by and thought I'd bring you something." She held out the small bread roll. Nira blinked as if trying to understand why someone would do something so simple yet thoughtful. She reached out and took the bread, holding it gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Have you eaten yet?" Lena asked. "Not really," Nira admitted. "I wasn't feeling very hungry today." Lena hesitated, then asked, "Can I sit with you for a few minutes?" Nira opened the door wider. "Of course. Please come in." The apartment smelled faintly of old books and lavender. Lena sat on a small chair near the window while Nira warmed the bread lightly in a pan. When she returned, she handed Lena half of it. "You don't have to share," Lena began, but Nira shook her head. "Food tastes better when someone shares it with you." They ate quietly, the soft sound of the pan cooling on the stove filling the room. There was something comforting about the moment's simple calm. Exactly what both of them needed. After they finished eating, Nira said, "It has been a long time since I sat with someone like this." Lena didn't say anything. She simply looked at her with warmth in her eyes. Nira continued, "When you get older, you start losing people. Friends move away or pass on. Family grows distant. You learn to live with the quiet, but sometimes the quiet feels too big." Lena understood in a way she couldn't fully explain. She said softly, "Maybe the quiet feels smaller when someone visits." Nira gave her a gentle smile. "Yes," she whispered. "It does." From that day on, Lena visited Nira whenever she could. Sometimes she helped organize groceries or read mail that had small print. Sometimes she simply sat beside Nira and listened to her stories about her husband, about the small shop they once owned, about the neighborhood many years ago. The connection between them grew naturally. Lena didn't try to fix anything. She didn't try to change Nira's life. She just brought company, warmth, and a sense of presence. And Nira gave Lena something too: wisdom, stories, and a kind of quiet understanding that made Lena feel older and gentler, day after day. This small bond grew like a soft seed taking root. Neither of them noticed how important it was becoming. But one thing was certain. The quiet in Nira's life was no longer as heavy, and Lena's world felt a little bigger and a little warmer. Neither of them knew it yet, but the small act of help that brought them together was slowly turning into something far greater, something that would eventually change both of their lives in a way they could never have expected. Lena didn't realize how naturally her visits to Nira were becoming a part of her daily routine. At first, she had stopped by only to check in, thinking it was just a kind thing to do. But soon, the visits became something she looked forward to, something that felt right. It wasn't an obligation. It wasn't charity. It was simply two people finding comfort in each other's company. Every day after school, Lena walked to the same small apartment building. She would knock softly, and the door would open with Nira's gentle smile waiting on the other side. Sometimes the smile looked tired, sometimes it was brighter, but it was always real. And every time, Nira welcomed her as if the visit was the highlight of her day. One afternoon, when Lena arrived, she found Nira sitting by the window with a blanket over her legs. Her eyes were on the street below, watching people pass by. "You're early today," Nira said as she turned her head. "I finished school faster," Lena replied. "And I brought something for you." She held up a small bag. Inside were a few pastries she had bought on the way. The bakery owner had smiled at her when she picked them out, saying, "For your friend again?" Lena hadn't noticed until that moment that she talked about Nira often enough for people to remember. She didn't mind it. It made her feel warm inside. Nira took the bag with careful hands. "You think of me too much," she said softly. But her smile showed that she didn't mind it one bit. "I like bringing you things," Lena said. "And you hardly eat proper snacks. These will be good for you." Nira laughed, a soft sound that filled the room in a way that made it feel less empty. "You sound like you're the older one," she teased. They sat together by the window. Nira broke a small piece of pastry and tasted it. She closed her eyes briefly as the warm sweetness touched her tongue. "Oh, this is lovely," she said. "It reminds me of something I used to make a long time ago. My husband used to say it was his favorite." Her voice softened when she spoke about him, as if she were touching a memory she held close to her heart. "Did you bake a lot back then?" Lena asked. "Oh yes," Nira said, her eyes shining slightly. "I baked every week. Bread, pastries, biscuits. My kitchen was always warm. My husband used to sit at the table and talk while I worked. He would steal pieces before dinner, and I would pretend to scold him." Lena giggled. She could almost imagine a younger version of Nira moving around a kitchen filled with warm smells and gentle laughter. "What happened to your kitchen?" Lena asked gently. Nira sighed and looked around her small apartment. "Life changes," she said. "After he passed, I didn't have the heart to continue baking. And then my health changed too. Standing for long periods became difficult, so I put away the apron. Sometimes I miss it," Lena nodded. "Maybe someday you can teach me," she said. "I'm not very good at cooking, but I can try."
Ow.
Nira's eyes softened immediately. "I would like that," she whispered. As the days passed, Lena learned more about Nira than she ever expected. She learned that Nira had once run a small art studio before her health worsened. She learned that the studio was not just a business, it had been a place where she helped young people discover their creative talents. Some went on to become painters or designers. Some simply found confidence they never thought they had. But when Nira's husband passed and her health began to decline, she closed the studio. She didn't have the strength to run it alone. She kept all the old documents and artwork in a wooden box in her bedroom, but she never touched them anymore. One day, Lena found Nira sitting on the floor with the wooden box open in front of her. Papers and old photographs were scattered around her. "Are you cleaning?" Lena asked as she kneeled beside her. Nira looked up. "Not cleaning," she said. Remembering, Lena picked up one of the old photographs. It showed a group of young people holding paintbrushes, their faces bright with excitement. In the center of the group was a younger Nira, smiling proudly. "You look so happy," Lena said. "I was," Nira replied softly. "Those were good years. Busy years. I felt like I had a purpose." "You still do?" Lena said without thinking. The words came naturally. Nira looked at her, taken aback. "Do I?" she whispered. "Some days, I feel like I'm just passing time." Lena shook her head. "You're not. You make a difference every time you talk to me. You teach me things without even trying." Nira's eyes glistened, and she quickly looked down at the papers as if to hide the emotions that rose in her. "Come," she said after a moment, wiping her eyes gently. "Let me show you something." She reached into the box and pulled out a small, worn notebook. Its cover was faded, and the edges were soft from years of being opened and closed. "This was my idea book," Nira explained. "Whenever I thought of a project for my students, I wrote it in here." Lena opened the book carefully. She saw sketches, notes, color palettes, and small writings about hope and creativity. One note read, "Everyone has a talent. Some just need someone to believe in them first." "That's beautiful," Lena said. Nira watched her quietly. "I used to believe in that strongly," she said. "Now sometimes I wonder if it mattered." "It mattered," Lena said without hesitation. "You changed lives. You made people feel seen. That's never small." Nira looked at her with an expression that held both gratitude and sadness, as if she was being reminded of something she had forgotten. For the rest of the afternoon, they sorted through the papers together. Lena listened to story after story about old students, their struggles, their achievements, and the moments that made Nira proud. The bond between them grew even deeper that day. It wasn't just about help anymore. It wasn't even just about kindness. It was about understanding, connection, and the soft place where two lives meet unexpectedly. One evening, about 2 weeks after Lena first helped Nira with the groceries, Lena arrived to find the apartment dark. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. A cold worry spread through her chest. She knocked once more, almost urgently. This time, she heard a faint sound from inside the slow shuffle of feet. The door opened slightly, and Nira stood there looking pale and breathless. "Are you okay?" Lena asked immediately. Nira tried to speak, but she coughed instead. She leaned against the doorframe for support. Without waiting, Lena stepped inside and guided her to the chair by the window. "Sit here," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Let me get you some water." She filled a glass at the sink and brought it to her. Nira sipped it slowly. "I'm fine," Nira said in a tired voice. "Just a little dizzy." "You don't look fine," Lena said softly. "Should I call someone? A doctor?" "No," Nira said, shaking her head weakly. "I just didn't eat enough, and I didn't sleep well. The weather has been cold." Lena sat beside her. She didn't know what to say, but she stayed close. After a few minutes, Nira's breathing steadied. "You shouldn't be alone when you feel like this," Lena said. "What if something happened?" Nira looked at her with tired eyes. "Sometimes I forget to take care of myself," she admitted. "Thank you for being here." Lena stayed for over an hour, making sure Nira ate a little and warmed up under a blanket. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Lena's presence filled the silence with comfort. Before leaving, Lena said, "If you ever feel unwell, promise me you'll call." Nira gave a slow nod. "I promise." The next day, Lena hurried to Nira's apartment right after school. She knocked gently, and this time, the door opened quickly. Nira looked much better. She had some color in her cheeks again. "You look relieved," Nira said with a small laugh. "I was worried," Lena admitted. "I thought about you all day." Nira's eyes softened in a way that made Lena feel something warm bloom inside her. "You are a blessing," Nira said quietly. "I don't know what I did to deserve someone like you." Lena shook her head. "It's not about deserving," she said. "We just found each other." Over the next several days, their connection deepened even further. They talked more about life, about hopes, about loneliness, and about change. Lena learned that Nira had kept many things inside for years, things she had no one to share with. One afternoon, Nira said something that Lena would never forget. "You know," Nira said, "sometimes one small act can open a door you didn't even know was there." "You opened one for me?" Lena didn't know how to respond. She simply smiled and held Nira's hand gently. The days continued like this, simple, soft, and full of meaning. And even though neither of them said it out loud, they both sensed that their bond was leading to something important. Something neither of them fully understood yet. The miracle hadn't happened yet. Not the big one, but its shape was beginning to form, quietly and gently. In the space between a girl who cared and a woman who had spent too long alone, and soon, everything would change in a way neither of them expected. Lena woke up early the next morning with a strange feeling in her chest. It was not worry, not sadness, but a mix of curiosity and something she couldn't quite name. Her mind kept returning to the soft voice of the older woman the night before, the way she had spoken with quiet strength. Something about her words had stayed with Lena long after she left the building. She got ready for her day, trying to focus on schoolwork and chores, but the thought of Mrs. Hale kept slipping into her mind. She remembered how the woman had looked when she opened the door, tired, but also warm, almost as if she had been waiting for someone. Lena didn't know why that memory kept coming back, but it did. After finishing lunch, Lena found herself picking up her phone without thinking much. She stared at the number she had saved. She wondered if she should call, but she didn't want to disturb the woman. Instead, she decided to drop by and check on her later, just to see if she needed anything. By the afternoon, the weather had turned cloudy and a cool wind blew through the streets. Lena wrapped her scarf around her neck and walked toward the familiar apartment building. When she reached the door, she hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to make it seem like she was intruding, but something inside her urged her to knock. She raised her hand and tapped softly. A moment later, the door opened, and there stood Mrs. Hale. Wearing the same gentle smile Lena had seen before. "You're back," the older woman said softly, her eyes brightening. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Lena replied. "Not at all. Come in." Lena stepped inside, and the warm air wrapped around her like a blanket. The place felt a little different this time. Less quiet, less lonely. Or maybe she was just noticing things she hadn't seen before. "I made some tea earlier," Mrs. Hale said, as she walked slowly to the kitchen. "Would you like some?" "Yes, thank you." They sat at the small table, steam rising gently from their cups. The sound of the wind outside filled the silence between them. After a moment, Mrs. Hale placed her cup down and looked at Lena in a thoughtful way, as if she had something to say but wasn't sure how to begin. "Lena," she began, "I've been thinking about something. Something important." Lena leaned in a little. "What is it?" Mrs. Hale took a deep breath. "Before my health changed, I used to run a small art studio. It wasn't much, but it gave young people a place to learn, to express themselves, to grow. I always hoped someone would continue that dream someday. But life has a way of shifting things when you least expect it." Lena listened quietly. She could feel the weight in the woman's voice. "I have a box I want to show you," Mrs. Hale continued. "I haven't opened it in years." With slow steps, she walked toward a cabinet tucked in the corner of the living room. She opened it carefully and pulled out an old wooden box. It was polished but worn. It's the kind of thing that carried both time and memories. She placed it on the table between them. Inside the box were papers, envelopes, photographs, and a small brass key. "This key," the older woman said softly, "is for a place I haven't visited in a long time. My studio." Lena looked at it, then at her. "Why are you showing me this?" Mrs. Hale smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Because sometimes life brings the right person at the right time. And I believe you might be that person." Lena felt her heart skip. "Me. But I don't know anything about running a place like that. You didn't know how helping a stranger could change a life either," she replied gently. "But you still did it." Lena lowered her gaze, unsure of what to say. "Kindness," the woman continued, "is rare in the world now. People rush through life, forgetting the simple things. You didn't. You stopped. You cared. And that means something." Lena felt her throat tighten. She hadn't expected her small act to mean so much. She hadn't expected any of this. Mrs. Hale closed the box slowly, her hands resting on top of it. "I want to visit the studio again. I want to see it one more time. And I want you to come with me." The request surprised Lena. "Of course," she said, "whenever you want." A soft smile spread across the older woman's face, one filled with gratitude. "Tomorrow morning, if that's all right?" "It is," Lena replied with no hesitation. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Not about heavy things, not about the past or future, but about simple stories, funny moments, childhood memories, little parts of life that made them both laugh. As evening approached, Lena left the apartment with the image of the wooden box fresh in her mind. She wondered what the studio looked like now. She wondered what the woman hoped to show her. The next morning, the sun came out after a night of rain. The streets sparkled with puddles that reflected the sky. Lena arrived at the apartment early. When she knocked, Mrs. Hale opened the door with a small bag already packed. "You didn't sleep?" Lena asked. "I was excited," the older woman admitted with a smile. They took a taxi together. The city passed by their window shops, parks, people rushing to work. Mrs. Hale watched it all with nostalgic eyes. "It used to be so different," she whispered, when the taxi finally stopped in front of a faded building on a quiet street. Lena felt her heart beat a little faster. This place held something important to the older woman. She could feel it. The sign above the door was worn, the letters barely visible. But the moment Mrs. Hale stepped out of the taxi, her expression changed. She looked like someone stepping back into a cherished memory. It used to be full of life, she said softly. She handed the key to Lena. Go ahead. Open it. Lena inserted the key and turned it gently. The door creaked as it opened, releasing a faint scent of dust and old paint. Inside, the room was dim, but the outlines of easels, shelves, and tables were visible. Sunlight filtered through the windows, landing on a stack of old canvases. Mrs. Hale walked in slowly, touching the back of a wooden chair. This was my world, she murmured. Lena walked beside her, feeling the weight of the moment. The older woman sat on a stool near the window. I always dreamed this place would keep helping young people long after me. But when my health changed, everything stopped. She looked up at Lena, her eyes gentle but filled with emotion. I want you to have this place. Lena froze. Me, yes. I want someone with a genuine heart to take care of it. Someone who understands kindness. Someone who doesn't just walk past people. Someone like you. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. She had never expected anything like this. She wasn't someone special. She had only helped because it felt right. I don't even know how to begin, she whispered. You will learn, Mrs. Hale said softly. You have time, and I will guide you as much as I can. Lena walked slowly across the room. She touched the edge of an old canvas, ran her fingers along a dusty shelf, toe, and tried to imagine what the studio looked like when it was filled with people, laughter, and hope. Why me? She asked again, almost in a whisper. The older woman gave a tender smile. Because sometimes a small act becomes something much bigger. You didn't help me for reward? You helped because your heart guided you. That is the kind of person who can bring life back to this place. Lena wiped her eyes quietly. She didn't know what the future would look like, but she knew one thing: she didn't want to let the woman down. They spent hours cleaning a small corner of the studio, uncovering old brushes, finding forgotten sketches, laughing at small discoveries. For the first time in years, Mrs. Hale looked alive, filled with purpose as they sat together near the window, sunlight warming the room. The older woman placed a gentle hand over Lena's. You brought me back to this place, she whispered. You brought me back to myself. Lena didn't know what to say, so she squeezed her hand softly. When they finally left the studio, locking the door behind them, the air felt different, lighter, full of possibility in that moment. Lena understood something she had not fully realized before. Sometimes the smallest choices lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes helping someone doesn't just change their life, it changes yours too, and without knowing it. She had already taken the first step toward a miracle that neither of them could have imagined. Lena woke up the next morning with a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. It was something like hope mixed with excitement and a small bit of fear. The visit to the old studio had stayed with her through the night. Even after she fell asleep, her mind kept replaying the moment the door opened. The dusty, light-filled room and the quiet look on Mrs. Hale's face when she sat near the window. She got ready slowly, taking her time, thinking about everything the older woman had said. The idea of taking care of a studio felt too big for her, almost unreal. She was just a regular girl, doing regular things. How could someone like her be trusted with something so meaningful? But then she remembered the way Mrs. Hale had looked at her, like she truly believed in her. That thought alone gave Lena a little bit of courage. Later that afternoon, she headed toward the apartment building again. The sky was clear, and a warm breeze brushed against her face as she walked. She carried a small bag with some things she thought they might need: gloves, a cloth, a notebook. She wasn't even sure why she packed those items, but something told her they might be useful. When she knocked, the door opened almost immediately. Mrs. Hale stood there with a calm smile, wearing a light sweater and holding her cane. Good to see you again, she said. You too, Lena replied. The older woman stepped aside to let her in. The apartment felt even warmer today, filled with soft afternoon light. I didn't expect you so early, Mrs. Hale said. Settling into her chair, I couldn't stop thinking about the studio, Lena admitted. A soft laugh escaped the older woman. Neither could I. She paused for a moment, looking at Lena with gentle eyes. I want to tell you something, she said. Something I didn't get the chance to say yesterday. Lena pulled out a chair and sat across from her. When I opened that studio years ago, the woman began, I wasn't sure anyone would care. But young people kept coming, some shy, some troubled, some with dreams they didn't know how to express. And slowly, the place grew into something special. Not because of me, but because of them. I always believed the right person would come along who could carry that spirit forward. She reached for Lena's hand. Her grip was gentle but steady. And yesterday, watching you walk through that room, I felt like I had finally found that person. Lena's heart tightened. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to accept such trust. I don't know if I can be that person, she whispered. You already are, the woman said softly. They sat in that quiet moment together until the older woman gently pulled her hand back and opened the wooden box sitting nearby. We should go again, she said. There's more I want to show you. Lena nodded. I brought some things in case we need them. The older woman smiled. Good. That place needs a little life again. They took another taxi to the studio. This time the ride felt different. Lena wasn't just a visitor anymore. She felt like she had a role one she still didn't fully understand, the one she was willing to grow into. When they arrived, the wind carried a soft scent of blooming flowers from a nearby tree. The street was calm and quiet, as if it were waiting for them. Lena opened the door with the brass key, and the familiar dusty smell greeted them again. But today, something felt different. The room didn't look as empty as before, or maybe Lena was seeing it with new eyes. She moved to the center of the room and turned slowly, taking everything in. She imagined young people standing at the easels, laughter bouncing off the walls, the older woman guiding them with her steady voice. She imagined color filling the room, bright paint, messy brushes, stories told through art. Mrs. Hale watched her quietly. What do you see? She asked. I see what it could be, Lena said. The older woman's eyes softened. Good. They spent the next hour cleaning a small area near the window. Lena tied her hair back and used the cloths she had brought to wipe surfaces clean. She removed dust from shelves and stacked old supplies in neat piles. The older woman sat beside her most of the time, pointing out things, telling little stories about each object they found. That brush belonged to a boy who used to come every Friday, she said. He was quiet, but he painted like the world inside him was louder than anything outside. And this, she continued, holding up an old sketchbook, belonged to a girl who said drawing made her feel like she had wings. She used to sit by that window for hours. Lena listened to every story, absorbing each one like a piece of a puzzle. Between small breaks in cleaning, she kept thinking about the future. She didn't know how she would run a studio. She didn't have a plan. She had a feeling. Deep, warm feeling that this place was meant to come alive again. After a while, the older woman motioned for her to sit beside her. There's something else I need to tell you, she said. Lena sat down, feeling a sudden seriousness in her tone. I've made arrangements, Mrs. Hale said carefully. Legal ones. I spoke to a lawyer last month. I didn't know who I would choose at the time, but the documents are ready. I wanted someone with a good heart to take over this place when I'm no longer able to. Lena felt the air around her still. I want to name you as the person to inherit the studio, the older woman continued. Lena shook her head softly, overwhelmed. I don't know if I deserve that. It's not about deserving, she said gently. It's about carrying forward what matters, and I believe you can. But why me? I'm not special. You are to me, the woman replied with quiet certainty. Lena took a slow breath, trying to hold back the emotions rising inside her. She had never imagined something like this. She had only stopped to help because she felt it was the right thing to do. She had never expected anything in return. The older woman placed a hand on her shoulder. This isn't a gift. It's a continuation of something beautiful. And I want you to shape it in your own way. They sat together for a long time, the sunlight slowly moving across the floor. Lena felt a sense of responsibility growing inside her, soft at first, but stronger with each passing minute. Will you guide me?
Lena finally asked.
As much as I can, the older woman replied. Before leaving the studio that day, Lena stood near the door and turned to look at the room once more. Something deep inside her whispered that this place was going to become a big part of her life. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew she had a lot to learn. But she was no longer afraid. In the following months, Lena visited the studio often. She cleaned it section by section, organized supplies, made lists of repairs, and slowly brought life back into the space. She saved money for paint, brushes, and new lights. She learned about running workshops, planning lessons, and supporting young people. And throughout it all, the older woman remained by her side. She shared stories, offered guidance, and celebrated every little step Lena took. Their bond grew deeper. It wasn't just a friendship, it was something like family. One quiet afternoon, Lena was arranging a set of brushes near the window. The older woman took her hand. "You've already brought life back here," she said softly. Lena smiled. "I still have a lot to do." "And you will," the woman replied. "But you've done enough to make me proud." Time passed gently, and the studio slowly transformed. The dust faded, the shelves filled with new supplies, the floor shone under warm lights, and soft music played from a small speaker Lena brought from home. Then came the day when Lena held her first small gathering. She invited a few children from the neighborhood kids who liked drawing but had no place to explore it. She guided them gently, just as the older woman had once done. Mrs. Hale sat in a chair near the window, watching the children paint with wide smiles. She didn't say much, but her eyes said everything. It was a beautiful moment, full circle. And though life eventually grew quieter for the older woman, her heart remained full. She had found someone who would carry her dream into the future. The day she passed, Lena visited the studio alone. She unlocked the door with trembling hands and stepped inside. The place felt different still, quiet, but warm in a way she couldn't explain. She sat near the same window where the woman always loved to sit. For a long time, she didn't move. She simply breathed, letting the silence fill her. Then she whispered softly, "I'll take care of it. I promise." Years passed. The studio became a place filled with color, laughter, learning, and hope. Lena grew from a shy helper into a confident leader. She taught dozens of young people, each one bringing their own story, their own dreams. One day, a reporter visited the studio to write an article about its success. She asked Lena how it all began. Lena smiled gently, remembering a rainy afternoon, a heavy bag of groceries, and a kind voice saying thank you. "It all started with one small act of help," she said. "I never knew it would become a miracle." She looked around the bright, lively studio and felt a strong warmth in her chest. The miracle wasn't just the studio. It wasn't the inheritance or the opportunity. It was the bond between two people who found each other in the most unexpected way. Lena carried that miracle forward every single day, and every time she placed. Hale used to sit. She whispered the same words. "Your kindness lives on."